I'm Nelsonator,
And I'm Parrish Torch.
and this is Let's Play Mega Man Battle Network 6, Cybeast Gregar. So, last time, we took care of the, internet navies, the World 3 navies that were hanging out on the internet, and now we're here to explore the internet and squeeze the last bit of drops out of, what's hanging out in it. There's a lot of gates that hang out on the internet that can only be broken by specific linked navies' abilities, and I'm going to go around and gather up the rest of them today, on top of getting all the dialogue for the coffee. So, Parrish, what do you remember about this part of the game? You know, wandering around to everywhere you haven't been. What do you remember about it?
I certainly remember spending a lot of time doing it. And, as you're traveling to places with one link navi, you pass by gates that can only be opened with another. So if you don't have a walkthrough open and you're not planning out the most optimal route, you're doing a lot of backtracking.
Yeah, so, and I definitely had notes for what I missed as I was going around and getting all these. So, there are 5 types of gates, and there are 5 navies. Each navi can break 2 different types of gate, so at minimum, you need 3 of them to be able to, complete everything that's out on the internet. And some link navies are going to be closer to different sections of the internet than others, so you might be willing to, trade off for them. You'll also have opportunities over the course of the game to get some of them, but then there are points like here in Undernet Zero where you end up talking to a guy whose only contribution is a compression code for the Navi Customizer. I don't even know what that's for, but he's still saying it right there. Good for him. But yeah, so... in the moments of me sort of putting this together here, I thought, why don't we play a little game here? There are the Falzer Link Navies and the Gregar Link Navies, and you played Falzer back in the day, right? I want you to guess what each Navi can take out gate-wise. And your hint is that there are 5 types of gates, and each Navi gets 2 of them. So, as a reminder, in Falzer, there is Aquaman, Tengu Man, Tomahawk Man, Ground Man, and Dust Man. And your types of gate are water, fire, tornado, tree, and cloud. So, let's start with Aquaman. What do you think he is good at breaking through?
I would say the fire, for one.
Alright.
And does he dispel the water for the other?
That's correct. Good job. Number 2. Tengu Man. What is Tengu Man good at breaking down?
Gotta be the tornado.
Alright.
And for the second, I'm guessing he blows away the fire?
That's correct. Which is a weird thing to think about to me, because if you read news coverage of, forest fires and stuff, the wind is making them actively worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actively bringing oxygen to the fire.
Right. So I guess you're supposed to, stare at your cup of coffee in the morning and just kind of blow across it and be like, yup, this is how I'm solving my problem. It's making it cooler because I'm putting wind on it.
Yeah. Or he's such a much more powerful flame to the fire, it's akin to you blowing out a candle.
Yeah, it must be, because he's the windiest boy alive. Number 3, Tomahawk Man. What is Tomahawk Man good at breaking?
I remember the tree for sure.
Alright.
Gosh.
So, as a reminder, the other types are water, fire, cloud, and tornado.
Cloud?
You are correct. Yes, it is the cloud. For some reason, he can cut a cloud in half with his tomahawk.
Sure. I mean, yeah, why not? All of those are pretty formless and shapeless and would offer no resistance to a blade, so why not the cloud?
So why not the cloud? Number 4, Ground Man.
Oh boy. Fire?
Alright, that's your first guess.
And, for the second one, I would say it can't be fire and tornado because that would be the same as Tengu Man. The water?
So, Ground Man is water and tree.
Okay.
I wouldn't think about, drilling a hole through a tree per se, but I guess you're supposed to look at his massive body and how he charges through everything and realize, yeah, that could go through wood. Although then again, if I'm building a house, a drill is very useful to put screws into wood. So maybe that's how you're supposed to view it.
Oh yeah, people drill wood all the time.
Yeah, totally. Number 5, last and not least, Dustman. What is Dustman good at?
Boy, I would say the tornado again.
All right.
I might have said that for too many of them. And the tree?
Dustman is tornado and cloud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he also...
Yeah. Dust, he sucks in the cloud like a vacuum. Okay.
Yep. So, the interesting thing about the Falzer Navies is all of them have 2, and they're all kind of in a cycle like that. So, if you had been metagaming this during your discussions and I told you the 2 otherwise, you could have been able to just, by process of elimination, get Dustman. So you were 8 of 10 on that entire game. Good job. Now, the Gregar Link Navies are different. You said during that game there, well, he can't be the same as Tengu Man. A Lek Man and a Race Man both hit the same elements. They both hit water and cloud.
Nice.
And then Heat Man does fire and tree, Slash does tree and tornado, and Charge does fire and tornado. There's like a rock, paper, scissors matchup kind of going on between those 3 guys. And then the other 2 are chilling in the corner like, same hat? Same hat.
I don't really understand Charge Man and the tornado. I can get the fire because, it stokes the flames of his engine or whatever, but...
Yeah, especially because Ground Man also doesn't have, like both of them kind of have a charge-in theme, and they both are, in the same place in the world map, but yet... Charge Man goes through a tornado when I would think that, maybe it's just because he's so heavy, straight line winds can't knock him over, but I don't know, I don't exactly read up on train derailments.
Well, as we all know, trains only get derailed if you put pennies on the tracks.
That's the only way it can happen. But there, in college, I was racing experimental vehicles, and there was a point where another team from a hated rival was, coming around a corner, and they came around it too fast, and they got hit by, a cross breeze, and it picked their car up off the road and smashed it into the ground off the road. Completely shattered their suspension. And when I think of, wind and moving vehicles such as Charge Man, that's kind of what I think of. Even if trains are insanely heavy, I just flash back to the story of these guys having their suspension broken by a gust of wind. I'm like, ha, sucks to be you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they were obviously able to repair it and complete the race, but you still look at them having problems and you're just like, ha!
Yeah.
I shouldn't be so petty years later, but I am still.
I could definitely notice the difference in weight when I transferred to a new vehicle. And my new car was much, much lighter than the old one. And I could definitely feel it every time I was driving on an exposed highway in strong wind.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Some of the other things I ought to talk about here that I don't know if I've addressed previously. The graveyard area here has a lot of random encounters baked into it, and a lot of them are viruses that don't really show up any other place. So, the progression in the English version of Battle Network 6 is you make it to... You make it to the graveyard area, and then you have to fight a bunch of random encounters here, and you get the chips, a lot of the chips that you're missing within the library here. Like the Wood Dragon, and I think the Gigacorn only show up here in the graveyard, and I think the Catapult does too. This entire area is a bonanza of, high power chips. So you're supposed to hang out here a lot as you're sort of getting ready for the standard complete to finish the game. But it's everything is just sort of crammed into this one location. In the Japanese version, there was a bit more sort of runway into the graveyard area. There's an area that was completely removed from the English release. The the Immortal area, which is based on a Boktai crossover. Also, Anubis P battle chip. Finally, I can do a request that I got at least 10 videos ago, I think, of like, hey, can you do this program advance for like filling out my document here? I'm pretty sure it's something to do with like a Poison Pharaoh statue from Egypt. I don't know, man. Can you figure that out? Only now can I figure it out.
Hooray.
Not a fan of that guy. But, so the Immortal area has been cut from the English release. Boktai must not have been doing too great here, or the relationship with Konami was on the rocks and they didn't want to bring it outside of, like, the home region. I don't know what's up with that. And then the Graveyard area was actually multiple areas, and it was cut down to only one for the English release. So, the post-game of Battle Network 6 has sort of a problem where the game just kind of ends, and then there's not much else to do as you sit down and you grind out all of the battle chips that you were needing. So, what I have to fill my time with is stuff like this, where I'm wandering across the internet with all of the link navies to cut through all of the barriers that are left. And it's not exactly the most fun or engaging thing. Like, it's fun to fight guys, but I've gone past the point, since I saved it all for the end here, where my link navies are, like, facing any sort of trouble or resistance from anything that's outside of the Graveyard area, you know? So I'm just running around and beating up whatever I come across.
And at least, getting to battle with other link navies is a bit of a change from having to do this kind of post-game content in some of the rest of the series, where you're just Mega Man the whole time.
Sure, but one of the things that happens in some of those, well, I'm going to point back to Battle Network 3, because Battle Network 3's post-game was extremely structured. You beat the final boss, and you probably got, I think you needed a certain number of standard chips to be able to make it into the secret area, and then you get access to the secret area. And then as you complete your standard library or do other tasks in the game, it lets you go deeper into the area before you confront Serenade and then base SP, or is it base GS? I think it's GS at that point, because that's where he's fused with Gospel and has all the cool attacks and stuff. Then they add in the time trials, which are an extra reward to make sure that you're doing good in the game. And that's sort of a challenge there too. And then after that, it's Mega Complete. You need to learn how to fight all of the bosses sort of at their best, which you also had to learn for the time trials. So those two are sort of synergistic. And then by that point, you'll have 5 stars because you've beaten the time trials, you've beaten the final boss, you did standard complete, you did Mega Complete, you completed the time trials or beat base GS. I forget which one I mentioned earlier, one of those two. So you're at 5. And then I don't know how you're supposed to learn this, but you have to input a command code on the title screen so you can get access to the last 2, which are Giga Complete and PA Complete, because the PA Complete requires a Giga Chip. So then you are now doing like survival battles to souped up versions of all of the bosses, and they get much faster, they hit much harder. Like, it is a challenge of your skill, and then once you've done that, here is the final boss again, strengthened to its maximum power. And there's a very good structure of it sort of leading you through the post-game there. Comparing that to Battle Network 6, where you just slam into the Graveyard area and there's nothing else to do besides run around in it, it feels a little bit bad, you know?
Yeah.
And not all of the post-games have been well-structured. Like, I can point to Battle Network 4 and how they make you loop New Game Plus, and, like, that's not the best New Game Plus structure, but they're at least showing you new content as you're replaying through stuff you recognize. You don't really get that in Battle Network 6.
Yeah. I did get annoyed realizing partway through Battle Network 4 that I'd missed something on one of the playthroughs, and realizing that the only way to get it is to go back through the loop again.
Yeah.
That was frustrating.
Yeah, and then the Battle Network 5 also sort of ends up in a situation alongside 6 here, where you get access to the post-game area, but then it's sort of gated, where you open up the post-game secret area, and then suddenly every virus on the internet is level 2. So you have to comb through the entire internet and the entire world to collect the level 2 battle chips so that you can make your PAs, so that you can fill out your library, and then you advance through the secret area again, get to the 3rd area of strength, and then you go back and you run through the internet again. And it's just sort of like dragging out and enforcing the grinding in a way that I don't find particularly great. So, I'm, as you can sort of hear from me talking about here, I'm not the biggest fan of Battle Network 5's post-game progression either. It's just, we had it good in Battle Network 3, and then there's something to do in 4 as it goes on, and then 5 and 6, it just kinda, it's just kinda done.
Yeah. Yeah, of the series, I only got into it in Battle Network 3, so I played 3 through 6, and I would say that 3 is probably my favorite in the series, probably.
Yeah,
just for the overall story structure, as you said, everything kind of building and leading up nicely, even throughout the post game.
Yeah,
as well as just nostalgia, of course.
Yeah, the thing for me that I keep getting sort of stuck on when I think back of the old games and what I want to play, because for me it's somewhere between like 2, 3, and 6, but the problem I have with 3 is I don't entirely like the chips you get access to during the game. I don't know how else to really explain it, but I just kind of use the chips and I'm like, 2, I really like, because it keeps a lot of the enemy, like, when you go from Battle Network 1 to Battle Network 2, they keep a lot of the sort of weird viruses while shaving off some of, like, the worst and the weirdest. But then once you get to 3, like, aside from the really iconic stuff, it drops a lot of the weird little guys that are kind of in there. So I like playing 2 so I can see the weird guys I recognize from the first game, but in a game with more mechanics that feels better to play, if that makes any sense. And, like, the Freezeman scenario in the story is, in some ways, sort of, unforgivable. Many people that have played these games and, like, or people who are playing that game for the first time and don't know it's coming, it's awful. Like, they do a search across the entire internet while parts of it are sort of gated off and you're not allowed to sort of, like, go back the ways you were used to. Like, this is sort of a final exam of internet navigation, and it sucks. Like, I saw a LPer or a streamer that I follow, like, had just completed Battle Network 2, and his immediate, like, reaction upon hitting the credits was just like, that game was pretty alright, except the Freezeman scenario. It sucked. It was awful. So, when I say 2 is my favorite game, like, I have to contend with the fact that even I will hit a stumbling block in the Freezeman scenario and have to pull up a guide to figure out just where the heck I need to go. It's a problem. So, and on top of that, the Navi customizer isn't in Battle Network 2, so you can't guarantee chip drops from enemies, so you might fight a battle perfectly, and then you might just not get what you need. So, like, not all the tools are quite there yet to make the game really great. And that's, like, 3 is the first game where it really comes together with a Navi customizer, and everything is in place, and everything after 3 is, like, iterations upon the ideas that it put in place. They don't really change things about the formula until 6 here, where they split your sort of power-ups between the cross system and the beast out system. And previously it was like, oh yeah, you've got the double soul or you have the style, where you're sort of locked in, and then that's just kind of it. So that's one of the other reasons why I really like 6, because they have sort of, like, achieved perfection in their, like, gameplay aspect of it, but then playing through it again and hitting this point where you just kind of slam into the end, it doesn't feel the best.
Yeah.
So that's, I don't know, these are my opinions on Mega Man Battle Network series. I'm glad that there's a Legacy Collection coming out soon so I can relive the magic and hate myself when I play through the games I don't like again.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see exactly what gets updated or changed. Because, yeah, there's so much that, even if it was flawed at the time, and they could have done it better. Now those bugs are kind of part of your memories of the game, part of your nostalgia.
Yeah, and one of the other things that's going to come up too, so, man, I'm really losing that battle there. Completely lost track of what was going on. What a great job, me. I didn't know that the barriers were exactly 100 HP instead of my 90. Things are great, huh? But the, I'm sorry, I got completely derailed by how bad I messed up that battle there. What'd you just say?
Just the fact that if they don't update some things, it'll almost be more nostalgic as opposed to going back and trying to fix everything. But,
right.
Just changing the experience from how you remember it.
So, one of the things that the Wii U Virtual Console releases of these games did pretty well, there were multiplayer exclusive battle chips you could get in battle number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And in 3, they were necessary to complete the game, and in 2, they were necessary for full completion, right? If you put... These games were emulated on the Wii U, right? So you can't do any of the multiplayer stuff. Excuse me, I continue burping. But what they did is they made it so that if you access the network menu, it'll just deposit the chips you don't have into your backpack. So you can still complete those games to the 100%. And that's one of the things that's going to be interesting with, Battle Network 2, because it has, 10 battle chips that are only accessible if you do versus battle between another player, with, the caveat of winner takes a battle chip from the other. So when these games come out, and I come knocking on your door hey, I need to complete the game! And then we're going to just sit on a voice call for 3 hours, just battling each other as fast as we can so we can get the chips we need, then trade them back and forth to complete our library. And then, as the cherry on top, we have to, trade back what we took from each other to be able to, fix our folders.
Yeah. I was going to say, it is interesting how many things from that era were kind of, winner takes all.
Yeah. Well, there was a practice where, you wouldn't trade a battle chip at the end, but then there was the mode where, you had to ante up to play. And it's kind of like Magic the Gathering that way, where that game was initially played with an ante system, and now, there is no ante at all. They struck that out, a year after they started release, and Magic the Gathering's, 30 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's incredible, right?
Yeah. Although I do remember some of the video games that are based on Magic still incorporated that rule, and I want to say that was a little bit after they had that was the rule from the physical game.
I've definitely seen a review of a game on the computer where there's an anti-system, but at that point it was I thought the game I'm thinking of is a single player Magic the Gathering game, and the anti-system is a form of progression for...
Yeah. Is it the one that's also called Chandelar?
Shadows or I think so. Where you're on, a mysterious island and you get starter decks from, 5th edition or something like that.
Yeah, I think the game is just called Magic the Gathering something or other, but it's commonly referred to as Chandelar because that's the name of the plane that the game takes place in. And
Something
since it's all PvE, they still kept the anti-system, as you said, for progression reasons.
Yeah, and it makes sense there, but it's not necessarily the best way to build camaraderie when you're kids essentially trading Pokemon cards. I had kids who lived 2 houses down from me, and there was a point where I traded a Mewtwo card from one of the pre-constructed decks, the first pre-constructed Pokemon deck I ever got, for an Oddish card that he had, because it was a card I had never seen before. And then, a day or so later, I realized, the bad decision I'd made. I was like, hey, can I have that back? And he was like, no trade backsies. And I learned a lesson that day.
You sure did.
I sure did. Mewtwo in those days wasn't great. He had 60 HP. He did 20 damage or something. He wasn't that great. but at the same time, he's still Mewtwo, right?
Yeah.
Like, the biggest guy in the entire game, and I just traded him for vendor trash Oddish.
Mm-hmm.
We learn so much when we are children. Isn't it great?
Very much.
One of the other things I guess I'm going to say here, because I'm now in Undernet Zero, it's amazing how they carved that section of the internet up into 3 completely separate areas that you have to access from 3 completely separate directions just to make things painful. Like, it's nice that you can get access to Undernet Zero, like, once you get to here, Greentown, which is, like, 3rd boss territory. Like, I had that entire video where I fought base early and nearly got smoked doing it, but, like, the access of power you get there, where you are suddenly at endgame content when you're, I don't know, still early mid-game, is pretty great, but at the same time, it's, you know, why did they make that area so awful?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at this point, I forget what I'm doing running back here. I didn't take notes on this part. Oh, I need Heatman here. Right, okay. I take him to under 0 for a battle chip I need for a program advance. Good. Great. Like, I took notes to prepare for the session, but I didn't write everything down. Oh, right, coffee. Yeah, I had a realization, like, maybe I should do the coffee thing right now. I need to get Bug Stop, and I was like, will they accept the coffee if I'm not taking it for a Mega Man? Maybe I'll come back later and do it. Once again, back to the gates and the weird progression they put into place at the end of the game here. Why did they do this? But yeah, I've got 13 minutes left of video here. There are a couple other oddities that I suppose we could talk about. Parrish, did you ever hear about the Beast Link Gate or the Chip Link Gate?
Is that the physical toy that allowed you to interface with the game?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. And on top of that, like, you could swipe cards to add additional effects to Mega Man. Like, you could change his element, you could change his charge shot. It would add special effects to battlefields based on, like, what you've done. Because a lot of these cards were, like, references to previous games. Like, here's Planet Man from Mega Man Battle Network 2, or here's Needle Man from Network Transmission. And, like, Planet Man would add, okay, you've got 300 extra HP, but you are also super heavy when you're moving around, and you've got super armor, or something like that. I don't remember the specifics. And then there's, like, an additional memory limit for how many of these cards you can equip on Mega Man at any given time, and, like, it's a weird, intricate system that we didn't get access to at all.
Yeah. And it absolutely sounds like the kind of thing that I would love to have had as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching the show and thinking it was so cool watching Land be able to choose what the exact best chip to have in any moment was and just slotting them in.
Yeah, like, I remember some of the stock footage where he's just, like, throwing in the battle chips into the PET, and it's just like, this is... I can't believe you're plugging in USB devices this quickly and having them spat out. Like, not even USB, because I don't even remember if USB was, like, the standard at that point, because it's like...
They're basically like SD cards.
Yeah, it's like plugging in RAM extremely quickly, and then it getting ejected out of the back of your cell phone that you've slammed RAM into. It's... What an interesting choice, but, like, I don't know, it worked in action.
I also seem to remember that they had blank cards that he could program different things into, like, you know, when he helped out Roll and, you know, got the power of, you know, summoning Roll to help, or however they handled Navi chips in the show. That was just something that he, like, programmed onto a blank Navi chip that he had.
Or it was like, you beat the virus, and then, like, its essence is sucked up into the battle chip to, like, this is our explanation for why you get battle chips after virus encounters. Sometimes. Maybe. Who can say? Yeah.
I think Program Advances might have even been that same way as well.
No, because
Okay.
they put a lot of emphasis in, like, the first season of that anime in Mega Man being able to do the Life Sword Program Advance. And, like, he spends, like, an entire tournament arc mastering it alongside Proto Man, and their final battle is both of them doing the Program Advance, I think, and then clashing with it.
Nice.
I think. it's been a decade, maybe two, since I last saw it. I remember seeing it while it was on TV, whenever they had it on Kids WB. Remember another thing that is gone?
Yeah, no kidding.
When it was, like, put alongside, like, Pokemon Generation 2, maybe, or Shaolin Showdown, or the Winx Club.
Yeah.
Isn't that a blast from the past?
Oh boy. Yeah, most of those shows I can still remember vague things about, like the theme song and what the characters look like, but barely anything about the plot. But then others, oh, I live for those shows.
And now the stars of 4Kids sing the national anthem. You remember that?
Yeah, vaguely. Like, they just had a bunch of voice actors, like, awkwardly singing as the characters they voice.
And on top of that, they cut together parts of the shows, or, like, cut the characters out onto, like, a green screen or something. So, like, somebody would turn to the camera and then sing their line for the anthem.
Yeah.
What an era to grow up in.
They also had Lou Bega record a custom version of Mambo Number 5 to introduce WB shows as part of their, like, winter snowball block of programming or something.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. A little bit of Pikachu doing the dance.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Just like, yeah, the fact that they had Lou Bega, who was, a very successful, musician at the time, even though he was kind of a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
The fact that they got him at the height of his popularity. Hey, do you want to do, like, a bumper promo for our kids' shows?
Well, I would sell out that quick, too, because it puts me in front of, like, a target audience that's going to remember me and maybe ask their parents to buy my songs in the future, and it's like, I don't know, they're going to show me across the entire nation? Heck yeah, get me out there!
Not to mention, Lou Bega also recorded that custom version for Radio Disney, Mambo Number 5, with all the women's names changed to Disney characters.
Okay, I did not remember that at all.
Oh, yeah, it's great. He's just like a little bit of, Goofy in my life, a little bit of Minnie by my side.
Okay, now I'm starting to remember. Wow.
I remember instead of a little bit of Sandra in the Sun, a little bit of Mary, a little bit of Mary became Huey, Dewey, Louie, can't go wrong. Yeah, bits and pieces.
Oh, my word. Incredible. Man, we grew up in an incredible time, man. I'm glad the kids today get it a little bit better than us.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, that's... there was something...
If you say so.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Parrish.
I was going to say, I seem to remember someone talking about how things from their childhood are so fondly remembered, specifically because, A, there wasn't nearly as much content being created, and B, it wasn't as readily available, so people didn't necessarily, like, run it to the ground, like, overindulge in everything to death.
Yeah.
Whereas now, by the time a meme goes viral, it's a dead meme a month later.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that is... So, one of the other things I want to get back to before, like, we sort of transition completely out of that sort of segment, wow, wasn't our childhood great? My dad has told me in the car that, like... So when I was in first grade, and this is going back a long way, the school bus had a TV installed, like, right above the front door where you could come in and go out, and the guy who drove the school bus had it tuned to Pokemon. So every day I'd go home from school, see some of Pokemon on the bus, run back into the house, turn Pokemon back on the TV, right? And my dad was sort of, like, reading the newspaper and saw me, like, going crazy over Pokemon, and he was like, that might be a good investment. So he bought 4Kids stock. And once the stock price, like, doubled, he sold half of it, so he made his money back, and then we doubled it, doubled again, he sold the second half, so he made, like, double what he invested in, right? And so he was talking to me, like, years later, like, man, I wish I'd held on to it for a bit longer, considering how big anime is these days, right? How popular all that stuff is. And I had to break the news that, like, 4Kids was ripped apart in court because they were, like, dubbing stuff they didn't have the rights to. And that was an interesting conversation to have with him.
Yeah. So, yeah, you got out at just the right time. Good job.
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah. It's incredible. It's amazing how that can, like, continue happening into this day, and how it's become, like, there's now so much of a bigger machine around it, but you still get these weird fly-by-night operations where they still cheap out on it, and you get just garbage coming out the other side.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, a lot of it could even just be, people misunderstanding or assuming they had the ability to do something that they didn't, because, hey, it turns out the law for copyright, just like everything legal related, is complicated.
Extremely. Yeah, and we've got this implicit handshake understanding for how we're going to do this here, and we're totally good, right? It's totally fine, and then the guy who holds the copyright comes back around later, and he's like, "Hey, Lamau, never mind."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but 4Kids went under, like, I'm pretty sure while they were dubbing One Piece or something like that, or they had the rights to One Piece, and they left off on a cliffhanger, like, as a mountain is falling out of the sky or something like that, about to destroy their boat. And that's the cliffhanger they left off on their dub.
Well, I mean, anytime the subject of the 4Kids dub of One Piece comes up, I just have to say, I know it's objectively terrible, but subjectively...
Yeah, yo!
Yeah.
Don't give it up, Luffy!
Is pretty good.
Dreamin'!
Yeah, like, it's one of those few examples where it's terrible bad. It's so bad that it loops back around to being good.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I love it.
Also, when the first time someone was trying to get me to watch the show happened to be that particular dub, I watched the intro. I got introduced to literally all the characters and what their one gimmick for their personality was.
Yep.
And then I was good to watch the episode. It's a great opening.
Yeah. So, like, I remember seeing the One Piece show back in the day, but the other thing I did is, like, I had my sister over in college at some point, like, hey, I found this cool show I want to share with you. Why don't you bring something to share with me? And she's like, yeah, here's One Piece. So we watched an episode, and then we watched a second episode, and I was like, wait, the first half of this episode is just the second half of the episode we just watched, isn't it? So we're going to watch a couple of these here. Why don't we just skip the next episode after this one and watch the next one after it? And then, like, it all made sense as we were watching this, and I kind of looked at her, and I was like, how does this happen? And my answer is, weekly shonen anime. Like, you hear about Naruto and how they've done the... Like, they had to build in filler arcs so that, like, the show could waste some time before the manga sort of caught up to where they had new material. By the way, I'm demonstrating the Slip Runner Navi Customizer program here. Enjoy how much I crash into walls, and also the fact that I bugged the Navi Customizer.
Yeah, I think when I first discovered the Slip Runner, I used it as much as I could, even though I knew that it was, kind of terrible, but I still loved it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if kind of terrible is the proper description for it, because, like, it's good in context, but you have to rethink how you're navigating the world to compensate for it. And then you can see me here, where, like, I'm confused, my controls are inverted, and it's like, was it worth it? And I'm going to keep it on until I get to the next coffee joint, but yeah, maybe not. One of my favorite...
Yeah, I suppose terrible isn't the right word, or just, bad. It's more just inefficient, probably a better term.
Yeah, considering I have to, like, backtrack.
Yeah, a lot of cases where I tried to use it, I was doing it inefficiently, but I loved it too much.
Yeah. So, one of the things I'm going to sort of explain here right as we get to the end. All of the coffee guys around the internet, because I haven't addressed it yet as it's been coming up. I cared more about the conversation continuing. All the coffee guys around the internet have specific rewards you can get from buying a bunch of coffee. I don't remember if there's like a specific unlock or something, but I think their dialogue unlocks over time, so you have to come back later for it. In the Sky area, they give you an HP memory, which, good. In Central, they give you Bug Stop, the Navi Customizer program, which is incredibly powerful, and eventually I will rebuild my Navi Customizer to take full advantage. And then in Green, they give you Anti-Sword Star. That chip is alright. You need it for the Bodyguard program Advance, but it's, kind of meh compared to Bug Stop. So I'm at the point here where I need to spend hours grinding in the graveyard, like I mentioned at the top of the video. I'm missing 32 battle chips. A couple of them are hard, like the Neo Variable Sword that I need to grind out 80 bug frags to be able to get. The Mine battle chip is also in a bug frag trader, so it's kind of a pain. And there's also the bug frag Navi Customizer shop in Under 2. There's a lot of grinding that's going to happen between this episode and next episode. But until next time, have a nice day, everybody.
See ya.